Hey everyone, this is Jesse from the Janjo Zone. In this video, we will be talking about just about everything you need to know about the Metal Raider Critter format. So definitely watch from beginning to end to absorb all the information that you can. So before we get started, if you like weekly retro Yu-Gi-Oh content, you are in the perfect place. So consider subscribing if you like that sort of stuff. And if you want to help support the Janjo Zone, either check out my merch, or my Patreon, or my TCG Player affiliate link in the description below. You can find the links for everything, and there's many ways to help support the zone. So, with that out of the way, let's get started. Want to support Janjo? Get your name in videos or request content for the channel? Then check out my Patreon for exclusive perks, content, and stretch goals. Alright, so Metal Raiders was released in the summer of 2002. It's really fascinating because it is the first real format after the LOB Yugi Kaiba format. Yugi Kaiba is kind of like the first format. LOB is like a, like a 0.5 thing. Metal Raiders was the first format after that, so it is one of the earliest formats in the TCG Yu-Gi-Oh! And there's a lot of fantastic cards that came from it. It really emphasized more effect monsters, and it really brought forth plenty of more powerful trap cards, specifically the counter trap cards. So we got a lot of fantastic cards for both power-wise, effect-wise, all across the board. So in this list, I have listed all the cards that you're going to need to know about the Critter format. And this is not counting obvious things from the LOB Yugi Kaiba format, which I've done plenty of videos on that before, as well as Metal Raiders. So check out my history video of that if you haven't seen it, because there's plenty of great cards from before that we could add to the pool that exists already, like Change of Heart, Raigeki, Darkhold. But Metal Raiders brought forth its own slew of fantastic cards. In no particular order, we got Cannon Soldier. You can use this to tribute monsters to inflict damage. So this is great for a quick burn. It's great to if you have some like defensive cards you're not really using. But more importantly, it's good for these two cards, Witch of the Black Forest and Sangan. I would say these are like the premier cards of these two. This guy and gal. Sangan, otherwise known as Critter in Japan. Now you see where the name comes from. Basically, when they both get destroyed from the field to the graveyard, you can add a monster with 1500 attack in Sangan's case, or Witch's case defense, from your deck to your hand. Which is very good. It is really the first searching cards in the format, apart from Last Will in Yugi Kaiba. But with this, you can search so many monsters, and that's what really defines the Critter format, that you have so many cards that fit this bill. Sangan can search out Muka Muka or Cannon Soldier, while Witch of the Black Forest can search out cards like Muka Muka or Summon Skull or Lodge-In and Seven Colored Fish. So it started this trend of you can now play monsters that are fine with getting destroyed. So which greatly changed Yu-Gi-Oh! In many ways. So like these two are definitely the premier cards. We also got Dream Clown and Crass Clown. These are two clown monsters, kind of the birth of a clown control type of strategy going on, where if they're changed battle positions, they get an effect. You don't really see them too much, but the idea is still there. And there are other cards I won't mention on here in detail that were brought up, like Harpy Lady and Harpy Lady's sisters, but we don't really care too much about them. And there's other cool looking cards like Skull Knight and Cybersaurus, which you actually can't play Cybersaurus in this format, which is unfortunate because Twin-Headed King Rex did not exist by this point. But then we got Dark Elf and Dry Gumo. These cards, they have a bit of contention against them because they're both very high-powered monsters, 2000 attack, 2200 attack. So these are very powerful, normal summonable monsters with 4 stars. But they do have drawbacks. With Dark Elf, you have to pay 1,000 life points to attack. And I remember I had this card back in the day, and I thought that was kind of crappy. Most players of the format kind of think so too. With Dry Gumo, when it declares an attack and you toss a coin and call it, and if you call it wrong, you lose half your life points. So the attack still goes through, but the fact that you can lose half your life points sucks, especially if we're running a card like Solemn Judgment or Dark Elf, that if you cut your life points in half and then you start paying 1,000, that's not very good. I mean, you could run like a Dry Gumo Solemn Judgment only, very, very aggro deck. But I think Dry Gumo is best as an offensive wall, while Dark Elf is good as having like an option if you need it, but not being your main attacker. I do like Dark Elf, even just like aesthetically, like it's pretty cool looking. But then we got Magician of Faith and Mask of Darkness. Again, kind of duo cards, where both flip monsters, in which Faith will bring back a spell card and Mask of Darkness will bring back a trap card. And these are very good in this format too, because there are so many good spells and trap cards. You got cards like Heavy Storm, Raigeki, Pot of Greed, trap cards. You got Mirror Force, Trap Hole, Solemn Judgment. Darkness isn't as powerful as Faith, but you're not wrong if you want to play Mask of Darkness either. Next, we got some just kind of general cards. We got Mass Sorcerer, where it inflicts battle damage. You can draw a card. It's okay, depending on how you play it. It's good for defensive purposes, because 1400 defense is very, like, in the middle of the road. Like, it's going to be beaten over by a Battle Ox, Lodgin, but your opponent's Cannon Soldier or Sangan or Witch, like, they're not going to beat over it. And if you have it face down and they attack into it, they're going to take damage. So you get benefits off of that. Its other twin here is the White Magical Hat, in which when it inflicts battle damage, your opponent discards a random card from your hand. You could play both of these in a like a hand control kind of deck, with a card like Robin Goblin. With White Magical Hat, its stats isn't as good, so I don't tend to play those kinds of decks in the Critter format, but it is an option if you wanted to go that route, which is cool, because when you start getting momentum with a card like White Magical Hat and you start getting rid of your opponent's hand, that's kind of a bad day, especially if you're playing a card like Muka Muka, where you need cards in your hand to boost its attack. And honestly, Muka Muka, when you first look in Critter format, you're not going to think too much about this card compared to other cards, but I really do think Muka Muka is the meta play in Critter format, because it's such a minefield mentality format where you're not sure what's face down, and there's so many power cards, so many cards that can gain your opponent advantages. To keep things in your hand is a benefit, which benefits Muka Muka. He's not going to become this unstoppable giant, but he is a very solid option for a beater. Of course, the downside is that if you don't have cards in your hand, it's not as good. But then you have a card like Thunder Dragon, who was introduced in this format, where you discard it from your hand to add to your hand. Stats-wise, it's not very good, but one, it does give you 2 cards for Muka Muka, so if you need that extra boost and you happen to draw into Thunder Dragon, well, there you go. It also works with other cards like Tribute to the Doomed, Magic Jam, or any sort of discarding cards. And also, if your opponent has a White Magical Hat and you discard a card, well, Thunder Dragon isn't the worst option for that either. So you do have utility, hand utility for Thunder Dragon, much like you would see in Chaos decks in GOAT format. So Thunder Dragon has a lot of use there. And the last monster we're going to talk about is 7-Colored Fish. 7-Colored Fish is like Lodgin. Not as good because its defense is a little bit lower, but it's another 1800 attack monster, so it replaces your Neo and your Battle Ox. So you're never really going to play those ever again, since you have 7-Colored Fish and Lodgin both as dominant forces in the same format. So 7-Colored Fish is really good for that regard too. So talking about fusion monsters, you have Twin-Headed Thunder Dragon, which is strong attack, but then you have Black Skull Dragon. If you're playing a fusion deck, that's the one you want to go for. Fusion decks aren't particularly good in this format just because you have so many destruction cards in this. You got Maneater Bug, Mirror Force, Solemn Judgment, Tribute to the Doomed. So many decks that run these cards. You need to run a very, very aggro deck with Black Skull Dragon, but This is Editor Jesse adding this in. I just want to quickly mention Mechanical Chaser, because Tournament Pack 1 was released, I believe, a little after Metal Raiders, around the vicinity. So you might see some decks that run Mechanical Chaser, but I will say a majority of the people who play the Critter format do not play this card, because while it is good with this 1850 attack, the fact is that most people weren't able to get it at the time, so most people just don't play it. So that's why you don't see them. And that's that. Moving on to spell cards, which we didn't really get a ton because the focus of the set was for trap cards. But we did get Heavy Storm, which is insane because back row hate wasn't very good in previous format because all we had was Dispel, Trap Master, Arm Ninja, like not great cards. But with Heavy Storm, it just destroys all spells and traps on the field, which is incredible. It's not Harpy's Feather Duster, it's not Mystical Space Typhoon. We'll get that in the following set. But Heavy Storm it destroys so much, which makes it a very powerful card, which really benefits something like Faith when you're running such powerful cards. Like this is added to the Power 5. Like it's incredible. Then we got Stim Pack, which you don't really see, but I figure I'd mention it because I think it's a good tech option where it increases the monster's attack by 700, then during each of your standby phases is increased by 200. So this can boost monsters like pretty well attack. 7 color fish to 25, Sangan to 17, White Magical Hat to 17, Dry Gumo to 29. So it does a lot, and you're really only... Because even after your first standby phase after this, it's still a 500 boost. It's still basically a reinforcement, so that's still a lot of attack. And how often is your monster really going to stay on the field? Probably not for super, super long. So I do think it's a good option to consider. But Tribute to the Doomed is a really great card. Some people, more often than not, would rather play Fissure than Tribute to the Doomed. But Tribute to the Doomed has the effect that you can target one monster on the field and destroy it. So you can select the monster. It doesn't need to be face up, and the only cost is you just have to discard a card, and if you're running something like Thunder Dragon, that's pretty good. Now, unfortunately, we are not including the very first errata of Sangan and Witch in the OCG, in which their effects would work from the hand. That was a busted thing. They fixed that well before the TCG, but if that was the case, this would definitely be like bigger card. But yeah, I mean, it's good if you want to just select certain monsters. Again, it all depends on how the build of your deck is, but I really like Tribute to the Doomed. You just got to be careful about when and where and how to use it. But moving on to the traps, here we got the counter traps. So Horn of Heaven, I don't really use this one either. You tribute a monster to negate a summon, but there's plenty of other cards that do this. You can use this alongside Sangan and Witch of the Black Forest, so it works with that, but you are getting rid of a monster, so it's a very particular card, I think. But then we got Magic Jammer and 7 Tools of the Bandit. These are both, they negate spells and traps, which, again, the whole negation of stuff is huge in Metal Raiders, including back row hate, with Heavy Storm. So to have certain cards that target specific things is still pretty good. Magic Jammer, you have to discard a card to negate. Again, if you're running Thunder Dragon, it's good for that. With 7 Tools of the Bandit, you just pay 1,000 life points. Again, it sucks when you're running stuff like Dry Gumo and Dark Elf and Solemn, so you got to be careful. But then we do got Solemn Judgment, which this card just is one of the most powerful cards in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Paying half your life points, you can negate a monster summon or a spell and trap card. So this card is crazy. You got to, again, with a lot of cards, you have to be careful when to use it, because your life points, yes, it is a resource, but it can drain very fast. Even in a critter duel where it is more of a methodical game, but things like this, things like Gumo, Elf, things add up very quickly. So you gotta be careful with that. This is the more preferred card over like something like Magic Jammer and 7 Tools, just because it does cover everything and more. So it's a good card. They've got Robin Goblin. If you inflict battle damage to your opponent, they have to discard a random card. So it's a good card. It's not great, but it's good. It doesn't inherently do anything. You have to do something for it to work. But if you're playing more hand control stuff, it's not too bad. And it's just another threat on the board, potentially, for your opponent, because it does not affect you, thank God. But it does have use for that. But then we got Mirror Force, which, I mean, is one of the most nuttiest trap cards in a retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Where it destroys all your opponent's attacking monsters. You have to be careful, with things like Sangan and Witch. But Mirror Force is a great card. You're definitely going to run the one of in the deck for sure. But that's going to be it for just talking about like the cards in the Critter format or the Metal Raiders. Let's take a look at some of the decks.
Wait. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, because that helps me upload more videos and know that you like content like this.
All right, so the first deck I got is this Balance deck. This isn't the most optimized Balance deck, but I wanted to make something that a new player could look at, could try out, and really go in many different avenues from it to see what kind of deck they like to play. So we're playing one Elf Dry Gumo. And most players prefer the 1800 attack monsters just because the drawback kind of sucks with these. But if you like playing more of them, then you can play more of them. I kind of like Dark Elf. I think Dry Gumo is fine with a one of unless you're playing a super aggro deck. But you do have a lot of weaker monsters like Faith, Bug, Sangan, but you can search so many things out. It's fine playing kind of weaker monsters and also things that can give you advantage, like Mass Sorcerer, White Magical Hat, Muka, things that you can really benefit with using different strategies. I'm playing 2 Tribute to the Dooms and 2 Fissures. Again, if you got the option, if you need to select a certain thing to destroy, I like having that to do with it. But otherwise, you got Fissure. You got 1 Stimpack, 1 Swords, because you really want to see what your opponent is having. I'm not running any of the other negation apart from 2 Solemn Judgments. A lot of people play 3. I like 2 because I don't want to destroy all my life points. But it's up to your discretion. You could cut out Tribute to the Dooms to add another Fissure, to add a 3rd Solemn Judgment. But again, I wanted to kind of showcase a little bit of everything, make kind of like a gumbo deck that a player could try and branch off from there. So if you're branching off and you want to go more beatdown route, then I got this beatdown deck I made, which does run Thunder Dragon, does run Muka, and I add another Dark Elf. Again, this is very aggressive, has Tribute to the Doom. You just want to keep destroying monsters and keep attacking with powerful ones, to the point where hopefully you're not going to pay a lot of life points, so Dark Elf won't be too bad. And then you can have Cannon Soldier if you need to just destroy things to inflict just more burn damage. Moving on to more of a back row deck, though, we got the Mass Negation deck. This is one of the more popular decks in the sense that you just have all these cards that negate everything your opponent is throwing at you. Spells, traps, whatever. And you're going to use monsters that you have protected to attack with Gumo, Elf, 7-colored Fish, Lodgin, just things you just want to go super... This is definitely more of a super aggressive deck. Again, it's very almost double-edged sword, because you are having to use a lot of cards, a lot of negation stuff. The benefits are still there, so it's definitely a good deck. I mean, all these, the decks I'm showcasing are the more popular decks. They're not, some of the more memey decks, except for one of them, which we'll get to. And actually, we'll get to it now. It's the Beast Skull Dragon deck. I couldn't resist to showcase Black Skull Dragon. It's kind of interesting with the build I'm going. Of course, you want to run 2, 2, and 2 is the best ratio. There's good things you can use with these cards. Generally, it is you want to get rid of as much stuff as possible and make sure you're safe as much as possible. You could run more discarding cards like Magic Jammer or Tribute to the Doom to kind of dump these in the grave for like a Monster Reborn. It's up to you to do that. I do like the 1/7 tools, just in case you run into like a Mirror Force or something, you can at least negate it without paying half your life points. A lot of players do run 1/7 tools, and that's why. But Black Skull, I can't resist. He's such a cool card. And the last deck I want to showcase is the Sorc Control. This one emphasizes more of a control deck with Mass Sorcerer. You could go more defensive route using cards like Wall of Illusion or Giant Soldier of Stone. But we are running stuff like Rom Goblins or Revealing Light, things to make your opponent kind of want to attack into us. To draw cards to get all of our resources that we need to draw so we can, go all ham with our attacks. And that's kind of the strategy of it. It's like start slow and then like boom, pick up speed. Which I like. I think Mass Sorcerer is a decent card in the right situations, but I think it's cool. So that was my Critter format Metal Raiders 101. just talking about all the great cards. There's plenty of other decks you could build for fun, whether it's Harpy Ladies or Scald Knight Turbo or Clown Control or Super Duper Aggro. But there's plenty of stuff. Again, you can check out the Critterland, I believe it's called, Discord for more information for like critter stuff and deck lists. Also my own Discord, which is linked in the description. If you want to talk about critter format stuff, I think it's a really interesting format just in the sake of what it introduced. And it's so different from any other format of early Yu-Gi-Oh! And there's so much just untapped potential in it in terms of what is like the meta, what cards are good in like certain ratios, what cards are better than others. Like there's so many testing that still needs to be done. Like it's certainly a format that has not been figured out yet. And there's many ways to go about it, which is crazy to think about. That is just one core set after Blue Eyes White Dragon. So it's pretty crazy. So let me know what you think about the critter format. Let me know if you want to see more critter format like this, or if you want to see other 101 videos like this. Again, definitely let me know in the comments. And of course, until I see you all next time, have a wonderful day.
My grandpa's deck has no pathetic cards, Kaiba.